He said, "Kneel," and Nadia almost did. The command felt like gravity, like the floor itself moved toward his voice. She caught herself on the table, and the glass rattled. Later, she would call it a close call, a glitch in her brain. In the moment, it felt like truth. Gabriel smiled, not cruelly, but with that calm, managerial kindness that looked like safety from far away. He ran the leadership program. She was the newest hire no one expected to rise. Tonight was a celebration dinner, low light, soft music, congratulations served like dessert. When he praised her case report, everyone listened. When he praised her, she listened too. Nadia was not naive. She had learned to steer rooms with data and questions. She knew the psychology of influence the way swimmers know currents, enough to respect the undertow. But Gabriel used something thicker. He never raised his voice. He never raised anything. He only lowered resistance. It started with small compliments, perfectly timed. "You read tension fast," he'd say after meetings, and she'd feel seen rather than studied. Then he offered a challenge track, 3 months of mentorship, private sessions on strategy. The email read like an award. The contract read like an invitation. She signed because ambition felt holy, and she had promised herself she would never live small. The first session wasn't sinister. It was crisp. He mapped power like a river system, tributaries, choke points, hidden wells. He spoke about the 3 moves, so casually she thought he was joking. "You'll learn them by doing," he said, drawing 3 open circles on the whiteboard. "Frame, favor, fear. Sounds dramatic," she said. "Power is drama with better lighting," he replied. The smile didn't reach his eyes. Frame came first. He didn't tell her what to think. He told her what to notice. Before a pitch, he would name the stakes in a way that made his plan look inevitable. "This is a safety issue," he'd say, and dissent looked reckless. "This is a legacy decision, and delay looked disrespectful." Nadia watched how a sentence could hold a leash. Favor came next. He gave her access others didn't have: notes, meetings, gossip disguised as guardrails. He called after hours to check in, to save her time, to protect her from the political weather. She started finishing tasks before they were assigned. He praised the results in public and asked the cost in private. Her calendar became his handwriting. Fear was never named. It crept in like fog. When she asked for space, he teased, "You tired, Nadia? Not a sprinter?" When she reassured him, he laughed. When she pushed back on a data point, he studied the ceiling a long time and said, "I'm surprised at your rigidity." He never punished. He forecasted what her future would look like without him. The picture was always dimmer. Nadia told herself she was learning. She told herself she was choosing. She told herself the way everyone told themselves stories and systems that rewarded obedience with opportunities called growth. The shock came a month in, when an audit report surfaced 2 years of mismatched invoices tied to a vendor Gabriel favored. Nadia presented a slide with the pattern. The room cooled. Gabriel glanced at her, expression blank, then said, "I appreciate your thoroughness, but you're missing the context." He didn't deny, he reframed. He turned to the others. "We can't let fear drive us into paralysis. Nadia is new. She's thinking from the surface." People nodded fast. No one wanted to be the surface. After the meeting, he found her in the elevator bay. "You're brilliant," he said, tone velvet. "But you jumped the gun. You don't have the whole picture. I showed the numbers," she said. "Numbers are never the whole picture." He leaned closer. "Here's what's true. You brought heat on a sensitive decision. You changed how people see you. I can fix that." Her face went hot. "Fix me?" "Fix the narrative," he corrected softly. "Frame, favor, fear. Remember? The elevator chimed. Unless you'd rather climb alone. That night, Nadia couldn't sleep. She replayed the sentence, the threat pretending to be mentorship. She opened her laptop and searched coercive control at work and dark psychology leadership. Articles blurred. She closed the screen and stared at her ceiling, counting the cracks like constellations. Somewhere between 3 and 4, she admitted it. She wasn't chosen. She was positioned. In the morning, she wore a different face to the office, one with quieter eyes. She printed the audit backup and sealed it in an envelope addressed to herself at home. She copied her notes onto paper and dated each page by hand. She started a private list on a yellow pad labeled Moves He Makes. Under it, she wrote, 1. Names consequence as concern. 2. Offers rescue after causing fire. 3. Rewrites motive as immaturity. 4. Calls loyalty long-term thinking. 5. Draws a future where I am smaller. At lunch, she met her friend Priya under a street tree that dropped tiny white petals onto the bench. Priya worked in a different department, far enough to speak frankly. You look like you slept in a courtroom, Priya said. Training, Nadia said. He's giving me access and asking for silence? He's asking for gratitude, Nadia replied, surprising herself with the bitterness in her voice. Priya studied her. Be careful. These men codepend on applause. Withdraw it, and they call you ungrateful. Question them, and they call you unstable. Nadia laughed without humor. What do I call me? Early, Priya said. Early is good. It hurts less than late. On her way back upstairs, Nadia stopped in the restroom and braced her hands on the sink. She looked at herself and said quietly, I stayed for the light. I forgot who plugged it in. The mirror didn't answer, which felt like mercy. That week, Gabriel increased contact. Invitations multiplied. He looped her into calls where he repeated her points as if he were translating them into a language executives could hear. He made sure she saw him doing it. In the evenings, he sent her reading lists that always included one mystery. When she asked about it, he said, Curiosity tests commitment. On Friday, she received a calendar block labeled Leadership Offsite, Final Selection, and her heart punched her ribs. The email hinted at promotions. The rumor mill winded up. Priya texted, You ready? Nadia typed, I'm done being ready. I'm starting to be real. At the offsite, a glassy lodge tucked into pines. They sat in a circle and shared leadership lessons. Gabriel moderated like a father. When it was Nadia's turn, he introduced her as our sharpest blade, and the room smiled at the metaphor. She spoke clearly about systems and safety and the price of speed. She did not mention invoices. She did not mention fear. She felt the leash in the air and decided not to tug it. Not yet. During a break, Gabriel cornered her by a window. You did well, he said. One more thing. What thing? Trust me publicly, he said, eyes on the trees. It will make your life easier. She thought of kneeling. She thought of the table shaking. She thought of how ease had become a synonym for obedience in rooms like this. I'm not looking for easy, she said. He turned back. Then you're looking for lonely. Maybe, Nadia said. But I'll be looking with my own eyes. He smiled as if she were adorable. Careful, he murmured. People love a strong woman until she refuses choreography. Then I'll choose my own song, she said, surprised by the steadiness of her voice. After the session, she walked the path behind the lodge and called herself from a payphone mounted near the service entrance, an old relic that still hummed. She left a message. If you ever forget, listen. Frame, favor, fear. He is not your light. Walk. She hung up and felt taller. When the results were announced, the room applauded. Gabriel's hand landed lightly on her shoulder. Congratulations, he whispered. You're on the short list. Her stomach flipped and steadied. She smiled for the photos. Inside, something colder settled. Short list meant leverage. Leverage meant leash. Nadia decided then, if power was drama with better lighting, she would learn to cut the power. She breathed once, counted the moves, and promised herself, learn the light, kill all switches. Nadia woke before sunrise and wrote 3 sentences on a sticky note she stuck beneath her keyboard. Believe what I see. Ask what I fear. Move when I choose. She didn't feel brave. She felt awake. The offside glow had already thinned into regular fluorescent daylight, and within it she saw how power traveled fast when praised, faster when unchallenged. She ate toast standing up, tied her hair into a knot that wouldn't fall during stress, and left for the train with the envelope of audit backup in her bag. On the platform, she practiced breathing on her count, not his. Gabriel had a way of pacing conversations so that everyone inhaled when he smiled and exhaled when he paused. She changed rhythm. When the train doors slid open, she resisted the automatic urge to rush. A small defiance, maybe, but the body remembers practice. That morning, she began what she privately named the counterframe. Instead of waiting for him to set the story, she named her own stakes in rooms he didn't control. This is about safety, she told operations when they discussed the vendor's delayed shipments. This is about cultural integrity, she told compliance when they asked why whispers traveled faster than memos. She didn't mention Gabriel. Power rarely needed a surname. He noticed anyway. At noon, he appeared in her doorway without knocking and leaned against the frame like he had built the building. You're busy, he said, the words more observation than question. Always, she answered. I've been thinking about your growth track, he said. You'll need allies. I can make that happen. Allies want outcomes, she said lightly. Not chaperones. A flicker, barely there. Then his smile returned. Of course. Dinner tonight? We can map the next quarter. I have plans, she said, although she didn't yet. When she didn't fill the silence with apology, the floor felt steadier. She texted Priya, emergency, not emergency. Need company at 6. Priya replied with a gif of a knight lifting a visor. Nadia smiled despite the knot in her chest. She needed her friend not to rescue her, but to keep her anchored to her better self. After lunch, she printed a physical timeline of the mismatched invoices and highlighted the exact dates approvals had jumped levels. The pattern drew itself. The vendor always cleared when Gabriel hosted the meeting, and the objections always vanished when he summarized next steps. She didn't want him arrested. She wanted him disarmed. She wanted the room to see without his light. At 4, Human Resources scheduled her for a mentorship celebration panel. The invite featured his name in bold above hers. The title, Power with Care. She laughed hard enough to startle herself. She forwarded it to Priya with one line. Irony is a full-time job. At 6, they met at a bookstore cafe that smelled like coffee and printer ink. Priya wore a denim jacket like armor. Okay, General, she said. What's the campaign? Nadia looked at the stacks of books, memoirs, manuals, thrillers about men who thought they were inevitable. I need to move the room without saying his name, Priya nodded. So, a vaccine. Tiny dose of truth that teaches the immune system what to fight. Exactly. Nadia showed her the timeline. Frame, favor, fear. He sets the lens, gives gifts, forecasts loss. I want to break the lens publicly enough that gifts look like traps and forecasts look like threats. And how do you do that without lighting yourself on fire? By building fire breaks, Nadia said. Documentation, witnesses, small speeches with unignorable questions. Priya grinned. Write them with me. They drafted lines over tea. Not accusations, questions with teeth. What risk model justifies bypassing review? Which teams will own the fallout? What guardrail fails when praise outruns process? Each sentence was a hand on a wire, testing where the current ran. On the way home, Nadia stopped at a drop box and mailed the envelope of audit backup to herself again, this time with a tracking number. She felt silly and also sane. She lay awake a long while and thought about the price of refusing choreography. Loneliness hurt, but she was learning its edges. The next day brought the panel. Chairs arranged in a cheerful arc, microphones lined like tame birds. Gabriel charmed the first 20 minutes, telling stories about his early mistakes, all of which were flattering in disguise. When it was her turn, he introduced her as evidence of the program's success. She's fearless, he said warmly. Sometimes too fearless. Laughter. Nadia smiled like a person holding both her temper and the door for it. I'm grateful for the space to learn, she began, voice steady. And I'm learning that power without accountability is just momentum. It feels good until the wall. A ripple moved through the room. She continued. We talk a lot about care. Care shows up as clarity. So let's be clear. When safety warnings are called immature, or when objections vanish in summaries, or when praise is used to speed past review, what are we practicing? Power with care, or power as cover? Silence, then a low murmur, then a question from the back. Can you give examples? I can, Nadia said, and I will in the right forum. She let the promise hang. Gabriel's smile tightened, barely. We all know change is messy, he said smoothly. That's why we need trust. Trust is measurable, Nadia replied. Show the numbers. The moderator, suddenly aware the birds on the table were not tame, called for a break. People stood too quickly. Gossip moved like a breeze. In the hall, Gabriel caught up to her. Bold, he said softly. Accurate, she said. You're making people anxious. Worry and wisdom share a root. You like to sound clever, he said, amused and sharp. I like to be understood, she said. The rest is set dressing. He leaned close enough that the exit sign reflected in his eyes. There are easier paths, she refused. By the time the compliance meeting began, Nadia knew two things with the clarity of a clean window. She was no one's secret, and the room would decide which type of power they loved. The conference room looked harmless glass walls, a carafe of water, pens that actually worked. She placed her folders on the table and set her phone to airplane mode so nothing external could tug her focus. Gabriel sat at the far end, not invited, but present, to support. Legal perched between them like neutral weather. Walk us through your timeline, the director said. Nadia didn't perform. She narrated. Dates, approvals, the way summary emails tilted risk into reassurance. When they asked for examples, she gave 3 modest ones, enough to draw the shape without drawing blood. She didn't say Gabriel did this. She said, the chair guided the summary past review. She let grammar hold the truth without turning it into spectacle. Gabriel waited until the end. I appreciate the diligence, he said smoothly. We should be praising Nadia's thoroughness, but this is routine variance. We mustn't make fear a policy. Fear didn't write the invoices, Nadia said. People did. Silence. Legal scribbled. Compliance nodded once. We'll pull independent samples, the director said. Standard practice. When she left the room, her hands shook. Not from doubt, from acceleration. Her body had been bracing for impact for weeks. Naming reality felt like releasing a breath she hadn't realized she held. By evening, rumors had evolved into facts with qualifiers. I heard their reviewing process. I heard leadership is updating approvals. No. One said her name out loud in the halls, which told her name was being said in rooms with carpeting thicker than the rest. Gabriel didn't call that night. He didn't text the next day. 2 days later, he invited her to a one-on-one outside the office at a quiet hotel bar. She accepted, not because she wanted the drink, but because she wanted witnesses. He chose a table half hidden by a column. "You've created quite a stir," he said. The tone returned concern wrapped as compliment. "I worry they'll use you as a shield." "Against what?" she asked. "Against their own cowardice," he said gently. "They'll let you take the fall if changes upset donors. You're new. You're disposable. Let me carry this." The floor shifted under her. He had found a softer ground protection. "You said last month I changed how people see me," she said. "You offered to fix that, and I can. But you keep choosing headaches. Clarity comes with some," she said. "It's still worth it," he sighed. "You're rigid when frightened. I'm steady when clear." His eyes cooled a degree. "You want a war. I want a mirror," she said. The bartender refilled her water. Nadia thanked him with her eyes, grateful for the interruption. When she turned back, Gabriel's voice dropped. "You're on the short list," he said. "Don't turn it into a no list. Are you promising something?" "I'm reminding you of gravity," he said. "It moves best through allies. Then let gravity work without my praise," she said. He smiled as if she were being adorably brave. "You'll learn," he said. "I am," she replied. The next morning, an email announced interim pauses on vendor renewals pending review. Another email scheduled a board risk committee session to be briefed by program fellows. That meant her. Priya sent a single text, "Armor." Nadia prepared. She revised her notes until words felt like stones she could place where needed. She practiced saying, "I don't know," out loud so it would sound calm rather than defensive. She slept poorly and woke with the payphone message in her ear. "He is not your light. Walk." The boardroom was colder. Heavy wood, paintings of donors, air that hummed like a refrigerator. The committee chair, an older woman with a surgeon's eyes, invited Nadia to begin. Nadia did exactly what she had promised at the panel. She was clear, slow, and specific. She framed the risk as culture. "When speed is praised over review, violations become normal," she said. "When dissenters are labeled immature, truth seeks other exits." She offered data, timelines, percentages, tiny failures that add up to drift. She never used Gabriel's name. She used gravity. Questions flew. She answered what she could and named what she could not. The chair listened with her whole face. When the session ended, she said, "Thank you." That was careful. Gabriel spoke last, as if closing a prayer. "We are grateful for Nadia's passion," he said, "but I want to make sure we don't let emotion wash out pattern. These exceptions are leadership in motion." The chair looked at him flatly. "Exceptions repeated our systems," she said. Something changed in the air. It wasn't victory. It was weight shifting, small but permanent. Afterward, in the hallway, Gabriel said quietly, "You made enemies. Truth always does at first," she said. He studied her. "I underestimated your appetite." "For what?" "For hard roads," she shrugged. "I have good shoes." He smiled, but it was skin only. "Let's see how long they last." That night, Nadia found her apartment too quiet. She washed dishes already clean, then stopped herself. She sat at the table with her yellow pad and wrote, "I am not a symbol. I am a worker." Then she wrote, "Symbols burn because people forget to move them." She closed the pad and went to bed. 2 days later, the compliance team requested interviews with purchasing managers. One forwarded her the invite and wrote simply, "Thank you." She didn't respond. She didn't want to become the story of the story. The next escalation arrived as rumor. Someone had begun briefing press under the table, positioning the vendor issue as rogue analysis by a junior fellow hungry for attention. The phrase landed like gravel in her mouth. She sat with it, then texted Priya, "They're building a version." Priya replied, "Build yours taller." She steadied and prepared anyway. The first sign that the ground had shifted was small and almost tender. A calendar update replaced mentor, Gabriel, with sponsor, chair, risk committee, and copied her on the thread like a person with standing. Nadia stared at the screen until her eyes stung. She closed the laptop, opened the window, and let cold air fill the room. She didn't dance or shout. Relief felt like a quiet room space without permission. But systems don't surrender. They recode. 2 days later, a glossy article appeared online praising the organization's proactive leadership culture, quoting Gabriel as a visionary who balances speed with safety. Her name didn't appear. She wasn't surprised. Stories, like rooms, prefer familiar lighting. She printed the article and highlighted the line about balance. Balance was a lovely word that often meant someone else held the weights. Priya texted 3 eye-roll emojis and a question. "You okay?" Nadia replied, "Standing." Priya sent, "Then stand brighter." The board sponsor her new, independent ally scheduled weekly check-ins. The first began with no ceremony. "Call me Elena," the chair said, setting aside her reading glasses. "I like clear sentences. Tell me one truth, one fear." "Truth," Nadia said. "Exceptions repeated become culture." "Fear?" Elena asked. "That I become a symbol," Nadia admitted. "Symbols are easier to burn than systems." Elena nodded. "Then don't be one. Be a worker. Bring me wood and water. We'll put out the fire by soaking procedures, not headlines." "Understood," Nadia said, throat tight with something like gratitude and grief braided together. She had carried this alone so long she'd mistaken solitude for identity. Work followed. Compliance published a report with recommendations that sounded boring if you read them fast and revolutionary. If you applied them, dual approvals, transparent summaries, public logs. The vendor renewals paused pending open bid. The world didn't explode. The lights didn't go out. People still ate lunch and sent birthday memes. That felt important. Gabriel stopped speaking to her unless others were present. He still smiled in halls, but it was a polite smile, the kind people practice when the room watches. Nadia didn't gloat. Truth didn't make her taller. It made the floor honest. Then came the final maneuver she hadn't expected. A recruiter reached out with a dream role at a rival firm. The pitch read like temptation itself. Title, salary, a blank canvas. "We admire your courage," the recruiter wrote. "Come build with us," Priya said. "Run and never look back." Elena said, "Ask yourself who profits when you leave." Nadia sat at her kitchen table and asked. Leaving would save her time and nerves, and it would hand the story back to the men with better lighting. Staying would cost more nights of slow burn anxiety and would build the thing she could point to later. A room with switches at shoulder height for everyone. She wrote 2 lists, then tore them up. Lists couldn't decide this. Her body could. She stood, walked the block, felt her heartbeat settle when she imagined staying. Decision clarified as sensation. She drafted 2 emails, one declining the recruiter kindly, one to Elena proposing a training series for managers called the 3 Moves: frame, favor, fear, identifying influence, and building accountability. The second email was the one that made her palms sweat. She sent it anyway. Elena responded within an hour. "Yes, build it. Co-teach the first with me." The first session took place in the same cheerful arc of chairs where she had once swallowed the word careful. Now she unpacked it. Frame names the stakes, she told the room. Good framing widens view. Bad framing narrows until only one path shines. Favor grants access. Good favor shares tools. Bad favor asks for silence. Fear forecasts loss. Good fear is safety training. Bad fear is theft of agency. She watched heads nod. She watched shoulders drop when they recognized tactics they had endured and accepted as normal. Gabriel attended the second session by request. He sat in the second row, expression mild. She didn't perform for him. She performed for the room. Afterward, he approached with a smile that resembled memory. "You've found a tone," he said. "I found the center," she replied. "Careful not to calcify. I'm soft where it counts," she said. "Spine stays." He nodded as if she'd recited a proverb. "You'll go far, with or without choreography," she said. A month later, compliance circulated quarterly metrics, exceptions down. Review time steady. Vendor bids opened. No donor revolts, no apocalyptic slowdowns, just boring integrity spreading like good moss. In the margins of the report, someone had doodled a tiny plug being pulled from a wall. Priya sent her a photo of it with the caption, "Your brand." On an ordinary Tuesday, Elena asked her to present to the full board. The topic, cultural risk and the language of power. She knew what to say and what not to say. She did not tell a hero story. She mapped habits. She offered phrases to retire and phrases to adopt. She asked the simplest, scariest question in every meeting. What will this look like when told by the person least protected by it? The room shifted. Not dramatically, enough. After the session, as people gathered coats and shook hands, Gabriel approached. There was distance in his posture now, careful geometry. "I heard you turned down a generous offer," he said. "I chose a different kind of pay," she said. He examined her face for a long moment, then said something she didn't expect. "You were right about the 3 moves," he admitted softly. "They're too easy. Easy makes bad habits," she said. He nodded once, as if he understood and didn't. "Good luck, Nadia. You too," she said. He walked away, light bouncing from his shoulders like he had stepped out of a spotlight and into weather. She didn't feel triumph. She felt cool air and a clear hallway. Months passed. The training expanded. Younger staff asked better questions. Managers practiced saying, "I don't know," and "show the numbers," and "we can wait." Boring integrity everywhere like moss. Subscribe, share, and comment to spread this hard-won clarity. If this series helped you spot the dark psychology of power, do 3 things. Subscribe for more faceless stories. Share this with someone facing subtle control, and comment the moment you realized a favor was really a leash. Your voice could be the switch someone else needs.